Welcome to Meet the Author, where you can join in on insightful conversations with best-selling and award-winning indie published authors. Your hosts today are Rob and Joan, who themselves are indie published authors, book publicists, and paranormal investigators with Tampa Bay Spirits, based in Tampa Bay, Florida. Thanks for dropping by. And now, on with the show.
Hi there, I'm Rob.
And I'm Joan. It's good to see you today and to hear you. I should say right off the bat, this is a pre-recorded show. So if we're not answering your comments, that's why. We will try and watch that night and answer some of your questions, but we can't always promise that that's going to happen. We're glad that you're viewing us either as the live show or you're listening to us as the podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, and also please subscribe to our Indie Book Source YouTube channel.
Oh, absolutely. We are a struggling YouTube channel. So we need all of the visitors and subscribers that we can get. Great shows there, so they're all there and more. Mm-hmm. And links to other great podcast series that we follow.
Yeah.
Speaking of other podcast series, we'd like to remind everybody after this show, Voice of Indie podcast on blogtalkradio.com with host Beam Weeks and Stephen Gary G's. And that's like every Wednesday after our show. Mm-hmm. So it gives you a whole evening of entertainment.
And it's just a podcast, but it's like old-time radio. You can call in.
Hello. Anyway, we've got that. And then we want to remind you about Episode Rewind every Saturday night at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, right here where you are, right where you're watching right now. This coming Saturday, December 17th, will be episode 56 with Dr. Michelle Finneran. And that was a very insightful episode. So hop in there and join us on Saturday. Next Wednesday, we don't have confirmation. We are filming this early. We're in October right now. Mm-hmm. So we don't have confirmation on who our guest will be. We've got... just haven't received confirmation. That'll be December 21st. So watch our Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube channel to see who will be featured then. I'm sure it'll be somebody really interesting. And speaking of somebody really interesting, we have somebody tonight. How about that? Would you like to introduce?
Yes, I would really. Why don't you bring him on up?
I will. Come on in.
Hi,
Bob.
This is Robert J. Emery. He's an author, a producer, and a director, and he writes under R.J. Eastwood when he's writing fiction. His nonfiction books, however, you can all find under Robert J. Emery. Hi, Bob.
Good afternoon. Thank you again.
We're glad that you're here. How would you like to tell us a little bit about your career? Because our listeners and our viewers don't know what you've done, and you should tell them. It's very interesting.
Quite an interesting career.
Amazing.
Well, it all began in 1875.
It just seems that way.
I know. It feels that way. But, the strangest thing is, to this day, it is difficult for me to understand the direction I took. When I was about 12 or 13 years old, I wrote short stories.
Oh.
Maybe they were 2 paragraphs. Maybe they were a page. Maybe one of them was about when my dog got ran over.
Yeah.
And I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed sitting down with a pencil and paper and fantasizing about things that didn't happen besides my dog. And I went to a Catholic school for 9 years. And our teachers were nuns. And there was one in particular that, she was a bit of a tomboy, and we clicked. And so I used to give these to her. And I'd say to her, Sister Dora, would you mind reading this? Tell me what you think. And she would always encourage me. And I said to her one day, why do I do this? And she said to me, Bob, it's because I think you have stories to tell. Well, I'm going to jump ahead some many, many years later when I made a movie with the Emmy winner Michael Moriarty. And I put that line in the movie because the young fellow was a writer. And the
Very
teacher
nice.
says to him, "You write because you have stories to tell." So anyway, make a long story short, I'll move ahead. I kept doing that. I kept writing, and the stories, as I got older, the stories got a little bit better and longer. And I thought, well, maybe I'm onto something here. Although I have to tell you, what I really wanted to be was an artist. But I took some classes and had zero ability as an artist. So I ended up, when I finished school, I went in the Air Force. And about a year into it, for some strange reason, the Air Force gave me a top secret clearance, gave me a top secret job, and sent me to the beautiful island of Guam.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't like the job. It was too heavy information for an 18-year-old. I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to know that my country was involved in some of the things that came across my desk. So I had a friend who was a colonel in administration in HR. I don't know why we're in the same building together, and we used to talk. And so I went up to him one day and I said, "Can I get out of there?" He said, "Where do you want to go?" I said, "Armed Forces Radio." He said, "You're kidding." I said, "No. There's a radio station on the base, and I can do better than any of those clowns." And he said, "Okay, big mouth, I'm going to transfer you." And he did. And again, it was in writing. We didn't have a television station. We just had a radio station. But it was also entertainment to me. It was performing in a way. So next thing I know, I'm out of the service, and I'm in commercial radio. I got a job, and I started writing commercials for the station, and I found that I had a kind of an ability for it. And eventually I met my wife, I got married, and I'm dead set on writing screenplays. And I don't know why. And at that time, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit again, but I opened an advertising agency. And we were involved with television commercials. And the next thing you know, I'm not only writing them, but I'm directing them. And I'm in seventh heaven. And at night, I'm writing a screenplay. And there was this bar not too far from my office. And sometimes I would stop after work and I would go there and have a drink. And it was a horseshoe bar, just a horseshoe bar and a little dance floor. And I'm thinking to myself, I could shoot a whole movie in this one room. So I wrote this whole screenplay called One Savage Night about these patrons that come into this bar and how they interact over the night. And I went to Sam, who owned the place, and I said, "How much would you charge me to close this place for a weekend?" He said, "For what?" I said, "I want to shoot a movie." "In a weekend?" I said, I got an idea. That ended up being 5 days. But anyway, he said $500. I said, "Okay, you got a deal." And then I went out and I cast from local theater, what have you. And we rehearsed for 5 weeks. Everybody knew exactly where they were going to stand, what they were going to say, and so forth and so on. And I got a hold of a relatively well-known director of photography. And there was a movie called In Cold Blood that had just finished shooting. And we brought in their camera crew.
Wow.
5 days. Was this in the mid-'60s?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Please don't press me on dates.
No. Just...
In Cold Blood, didn't that come out in the 70s, though?
It might have.
Yeah.
I don't know. It might have no. I don't know when it came out. I know when it finished. And this director of photography said to me, they're wrapping up this movie called In Cold Blood. And I know, there you go. And I know the crew. I've worked with them before. And what if I get them to fly in and shoot this thing for you? I said,
wow.
Well, anyway, so we did. And I got, nobody's going to believe this, $28,000 put together. And 5 days later, we had a movie.
Wow.
Well, and nobody believed the $500 for a bar for the weekend, which turned into 5 days. Nobody can believe that.
Yeah, it's back then. So anyway,
right.
we got a distributor. The movie got out. We did fine. And I mean, it would have never been able to be done unless I had this idea that because we're in one room, I could pre-rehearse this thing like a stage play. And that's what we did, because all these people in the movie were stage people locally, and some from a well-known Warren theater, the Warren Stage Theater, that used to put on shows with the biggest stars in Hollywood. And I made friends with the owner, and he was in the movie and so forth and so on. And then I thought to myself, well, okay, this is my ticket to Hollywood. Boy, I'm just going to be the next, John Frankenheimer or whoever. Well, that didn't happen. But then I came up with I saw a commercial one night on television from the National Safety Council. And and at the end of the commercial, they said, "Scream Bloody Murder." There was a warning about your driving. And I thought, wow, that's a great title. And I wrote a movie about
it. Scream Bloody Murder.
Yeah. And next thing you know, I'm shooting another movie, only this one was $89,000.
Wow. Going up in the world.
I brought in some actors from New York, Well, now the word gets out and I get hired to direct the film. Which one was it? Oh, I know what it was. There was an MGM star by the name of John Carroll. Was a big name, and he was married to Lucille Ryman, who was the casting director for Louis B. Mayer.
Wow.
And they had moved. I'm living in Florida, and I noticed in the opening you mentioned Tampa. That's where I'm sitting at the moment.
Oh, okay.
And they had seen Scream Bloody Murder. Next thing you know, boom, I get a call. Would you like to come to our house? They had retired in St. Petersburg.
Wow. Okay.
He interviewed me for the movie. It was called Ride in the Pink Car, with Glenn Corbett from Route 66 and a whole bunch of their friends in Hollywood. And he interviewed me, and at the end of the interview, he looked at me and said, "Okay, fine, you got it. How much are you going to charge me?" And I was directing a movie for these people. I went to Los Angeles. I used to shoot these movies with another fellow by the name of Jon. Names. It'll come. But he was a well-known cinematographer. He had an agent. He said, "I'm going to introduce you. You're not going to get into Hollywood without an agent." I go to Hollywood, I get interviewed, and the next thing I know, I live in Florida. The next thing I know, he calls me. He said, "I have you a meeting with Universal." Okay, get on a plane, fly to California. We go to Universal. We have this big, long meeting in the big tower. And they said, we could give you a movie of the week, a contract to direct 3 movie of the week movies at $75,000 a piece. Well, I thought I had died and gone to heaven.
No kidding.
No kidding, right?
Yeah. And I said, really, okay, well, send me some scripts. Send me some scripts. Guy looked at me and he looked like, "What? No. We'll assign you to a movie. We don't send you scripts." Well, I'm a very independent individual, and that struck me like I'm just going to be an employee here, right?
Right.
Okay, so, and then I said, well, okay. I said, how much editing time do I get when the movie is over? You don't get any. Your job is done when you shoot your last scene. I'm starting to get the willies. So I'm asking those questions, and when the meeting was over, we left, and this agent, his name was Morty Gutterman, a very well-known agent out there. And he turned to me and he said, you blew it. And I said, why did I blow it? And he told me. And I said, but I'm not, I don't dig ditches. I'm creative. I need to be involved in the creative process, right? Again, I'm going to jump ahead. I was introduced to another trip to Universal. This is a little bit later now because I blew it with Universal. And I didn't have the courage to tell my wife that we were living hand to mouth, and I turned down $75,000 a picture for 3 pictures.
For 3.
Each.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, I'm going to jump around a little bit and get to the gist of the story. So I had created I directed another one in there where there was a young fella who had just finished a movie with Spielberg in Texas with Goldie Hawn.
Wow.
The name will come to me. And I was directing this I know. It's just going to be all out of order. I was directing Riding the Peacock for John Carroll. And he brought this young kid in that was Steven's second assistant. He said, I'm bringing Ron Smith. I go out to California one time because I had created a series that was looks like it was going to go off. I'll get to that in a minute. But John Carroll had said to me, you fly into California, we'll give you an editor, but it's your baby, it's your movie, and Warner Brothers will edit. It turns out there was a friend of his who had retired, was a famous editor. His last, or one of his movies, was Giant.
Wow.
And he comes out of retirement to work with me on this thing. And I'm staying with Ron Smith. Okay, so Ron says to me, you want to meet Steven? Are you
Spielberg?
Steven Spielberg? Of course I will. He said, come on, let's go out. We'll go out to Universal.
Why not?
Oh my gosh.
Right. So we got to Universal, and they know Ron, and they push us through the gate. Make a long story short, we meet Steven, very nice. And I said, what are you working on? And he said, I'm about to do that fish picture.
Oh.
What is a fish picture? And he said, it's called Jaws.
Yeah.
The kid was 27 years old, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so now this is the crux of the story. So now Ron said to me, you've never been on, have you ever walked the lot? I said, no, I've only been here one time before. We're walking the lot, and there's a big sign on the stage outside that said Sunshine, directed by Joe Sargent, who was a very well-known director at the time, who I met on a Burt Reynolds picture in Arkansas that I was visiting a friend who was, my DP was on that picture. And I said, my God, I know Joe. Can we go in there? He said, of course we can. Come on. We go in, and this is really a turn in my life. This is the pivot point. And they're on the break. And I see Joe, and I go over, and I have to remind him where we met and so forth. And then he remembered, and he said, what are you doing here? And I told him. There was this long pause. And he said, do you want some advice? And I said, yes. He said, get on a plane and go home. They're going to use you. They're going to use you, and they're going to spit you out for breakfast. This is not the way to make a career. I said, you're serious? Are you serious, Joe? And he said, there's nothing wrong with you directing those, but you don't have enough control over them. And so it's going to be their movie when it's over, not yours. Do you really have an ambition to be in this business? And I said, yes. He said, go find a way to do it as an independent. Don't tie yourself up at the studio. There's the story. I've been independent ever since. I've directed 8 movies. I've done over 145 hours worth of television. Every single one of them was created by me. Every one of them found financing for every one of my projects. And I built a company, a production company. And I've never looked back. I don't miss what they had out there. I mean, my wife and I talked about it, first of all, and said, no, we're not raising kids in Los Angeles. We're not doing it. So my wife said, if you want to do this, if you really want to do this, you need to get used to flying on a plane. And I agreed with her. And it was a good decision. Well, then I created, I came up with an idea of a television series called The Directors.
Yeah.
Why don't we hold for just a minute? We need to take our first commercial break and hear from our sponsors. And we'll be right back with you. Hold that thought, though.
Everybody hold on and wait for us. We'll be right back.
We'll have a book giveaway coming up as well.
After we talk about his books.
Exactly.
So, you wrote a book. What now? It's time to make the choice between self-publishing and finding a publisher. Texas Sisters Press is a family-owned publishing company. We are also authors and avid readers. We can guide you through the entire process and will make sure your work is treated with the utmost respect. Where to start? Visit TexasSistersPress.com and click on the Submissions tab. Make sure you read the entire page. You'll find out what we can do and what we won't do. If you think we're a good fit for you, it's time to contact us. Texas Sisters Press. Quality books for the family.
They thought the siren was dead. In the novel Siren Song by author George Dismukes, James Harmon shot her twice. Several people saw her dead body sinking slowly into the abyss. But now, in Siren Song 2, evidence suggests that she may still be alive.
She killed that boatload of people. It was her! And she's just getting started!
Angie, that's impossible.
The cold chill up my spine tells me it's not impossible. We've got to start all over again. And this time, do it right.
Siren Song 2. The story continues. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites. Get your copy today.
At Indie Booksource, you can shop by genre or by author, and you will be buying direct from the author's main purchase link. We offer hundreds of titles in formats that include ebooks, paperback, hardbound, and audiobook. Support an indie author. Visit indiebooksource.com today. Hi. Welcome back. Okay, you were just about to tell us about The Directors, which actually I'm pretty sure that I've watched.
Well, good. I'm glad you did. I'm going to back up just a second.
Sure.
And my ad agency, and that's a long story how I ended up in Canton, Ohio. But one of the things I did was create a morning talk show, 1 hour talk show with male and female hosts. The female was Diana Batts, who was Miss World at the time. And the Warren Theater, as I said, in Warren, Ohio, used to bring in all these stars. So we would have as a guest, because they would promote their shows with us, And this was 5 days a week, 1 hour a day. I don't know, Tab Hunter and Imogene Coca and Mercedes Cambridge, and it just went on and on and on. And also what I did is then I eventually closed the agency. I wanted to do film full time. And I started with local commercials, regional, national commercials, and I did over 250 commercials. And then I slowly moved into the other part. So I've jumped back to the beginning. But in any case, so we're now moving forward. I'm into television. I'm looking, and things have progressed now, and I'm seeing television, and it's opening up, and there's cable channels coming, and so forth and so on. And so I created this thing called The Directors, and we decided it would be a 1 hour show, and it would feature one single director, and then we would bring on guests. And we started with Robert Wise, Sound of Music, West Side Story, lovely man. Him and I became very good friends until he died. What an extraordinary individual. And then we went on to John Frankenheimer, and we just thought we'd start doing all these older guys, the established guys. We ended up doing 91 1 hour shows. In the United States, it sold to Starz Encore. Now, first of all, I got to tell you, I thought I was going to do 13 shows. Starz Encore, every 13 shows would give me a renewal for a total of 91 shows. And all of a sudden, I am totally tied up with writing, producing, and directing these shows. And they were being done in New York or Los Angeles. So I was on a plane constantly. And at some point, I had to get a New York producer to handle things there. And then I got a Los Angeles producer and said, I can't be flying all the time, guys. You handle it. I'll edit it. I'll write it. But in the course, I really insisted on doing some of them, the ones that I really wanted to do. And I got to work with and meet just about every Hollywood star you can imagine. I became good friends with Tom Hanks, one of the most down-to-earth individuals you will ever meet in your life. He doesn't know he's a movie star. Somebody should tell him. He's a lovely guy. And 5 years later, when the contract ran out with Starz Encore, the Reels channel had come on the air at that time, and they picked it up for 5 years. And we ended up being in over 75 countries around the world.
Wow.
And so, and I liked television. I did. And I was it's going to sound crazy to anybody that wants to become a film director. I was getting a little tired of the movies. Now it's not 5 and 6 days. Now it's 6, 7, 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And now they're big movies. And now they're a couple of $1 million and not, and even those prices were relatively inexpensive. But all the films did well. And we were very lucky to be able to cast really good, solid people out of Hollywood. And, I just thought, well, I've done it. I've done it my way. Nobody tells me what to do. Nobody tells me what it is. What is it that I'm missing? That place it's a nut house out there. It's who can I eat today for the sake of my career? No.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to sound arrogant. I mean it sincerely. That I suddenly realized that I was doing well. I was making a very good living, and I was doing it totally on my own, with my own company, in Tampa, Florida. I then for PBS, I thought up the idea of doing the history of genocide.
Yeah,
not a very good subject. And I took it to PBS. And we played successfully at 126 stations across the country. And some of them were reporting some of the highest ratings. Most of them went in at 11 o'clock at night. they actually shared with me letters that they received from parents that said, can you drop that down an hour? I want my kids to see this. And it was pretty brutal, the visuals, especially the Holocaust, because the Germans documented so much. But PBS, I said to PBS, how far do you want me to take this? And they said, no restrictions. If you're going to do this, you got to do it right.
Wow.
You know, so Library of Congress provided most of the footage, archival footage. And we had over 80 people, survivors, family members of people that were part of a genocide, professors, scholars, over 80 of them. It was 4 hours, miniseries, 4 hours. We're thinking of re-releasing it now to a streaming service. It's still pretty relevant.
Is that the one Jon Voight?
Yeah, he was
the host. Jon was the host. And then I did a 1 hour special for MSNBC, and I'm telling you the highlights because I'm very proud of this. I went to them with an idea that I knew this young fella who had just got out of the Marines, and he was a sniper. That was his job. And I said to him, would you sit in front of a camera and tell me your story? And he said yes. So anyway, we went to MSNBC. They gave me Lester Holt. Lester was the host of the show. And this young fella sat down and told us his story and how he had to leave the Marines for what he had done. And I said to him during the interview, you were doing what your country asked you to do. And he said, yes, but I couldn't do it anymore. And he said to me, I'll never forget this. I followed them for 2 or 3 days. I'm given the target. I'm told who it is. I'll follow them. I'll see what time they leave home in the morning, what time they come back at night. And he said, then when I line up the shot, the last thing when he leaves the house, I wonder if he kissed his wife and kids goodbye.
Oh, that's sad.
Oh my God, I mean, he was almost 23 at the time, which I thought was pretty fantastic that he would bear himself like that. Yeah. So it was won a lot of awards.
Well, you at 18 had realized that what was coming across your desk was too heavy.
Yeah,
at 18, you were like, I can't handle this.
Yeah.
You know, and you were only 18.
It was above me. I mean, it was above my pay grade. I couldn't deal with it.
But 23 to have to deal with that, I just don't know.
I said to him, well, how many? And he said, you mean how many did I kill? And he said, I said, yes. And he said, that's my secret until I die.
Wow.
God bless him.
Yeah, no kidding. So then you did something for Lifetime Television, Swimming Upstream?
Oh, I did. Yes, I bought a book.
You wrote a book?
No, I bought a book.
Oh, you bought a book.
Yeah, this was a very well-known writer whose name eludes me at the moment, who wrote a lot of books. And he had written a book called Praise of the Human Season, which is based on a poem. And I tried to buy that book. I said to my wife, I have got to make this movie. Well, somebody had optioned it. So she went to the library and she came back with 8 of his books. And she said, if you like them so much, there's got to be one in here. And there was a movie or a book called The Greatest Thing That Almost Happened, which CBS had made it as a movie of the week. And I watched it and it was horrible. And I said, well, I'm going to remake this thing. And so I got Michael Moriarty, Matt Zuckery, who's a big star now on Fox with a series called The Resident. Back then, I was his second Kelly Rutherford, just wonderful casting director out there that got me some really good, solid people. And we made it, and then it went theatrical, and then Lifetime saw it and said, "Can we buy this for Lifetime?" I said, well, "Are you kidding?" Of course.
Certainly.
So yeah, that's Swimming Upstream. The movie or the book was supposed to be a small suburb of Cleveland. And when I mean small, it was just like this little burg town outside. And I went up and I did some location scouting, and I didn't like the way I looked at it. And I think it was my wife that said, "You are from a little small New England town. Why don't you go home and make this movie?" And we shot it in my hometown.
Where is your hometown?
Bristol, Rhode Island.
Okay.
Yeah. It's out on a little peninsula, and then there's a bridge that connects it to Newport. And I mean, it was a prodigal son comes home, and I had police cops closing streets for me, and it was incredible, just wonderful experience. And then I was so busy, by the way, with the directors, because the directors didn't wrap until 2006. It was just sending me crazy. So that was the last movie I made because I didn't have any more time. And plus I was doing Genocide Factor, and I also did the history of Western cinema for the Starz Encore Western channel.
Wow. So you've been pretty busy.
And you're an author on top of all of this.
Okay, well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Speaking of writing,
yes.
Why don't we talk about? We'll switch channels here in a minute. We're going to have to break for our second commercials, but let's introduce the book anyway.
I know that. Yeah, I know. Yes, this is the book that Bob would like to talk about. America Standing Strong, Moving Past the Cataclysmic Wounds of Recent Years. And this one is the one you'll find under his given name, Robert J. Emery. But I do want to just show you very quickly Midnight Black, and then we have Autopsy 1 and Autopsy 2. And you can find all of these on his Amazon page.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Those are nonfiction that he's written, but tonight he would like to speak about America Standing Strong, and we'll do that as soon as we come back from this word from our sponsors, and then I will also give you all of the places that you can reach him and find out more about his work.
There you go. So don't go away.
We'll
book giveaway immediately following these commercials. Ready?
Yes.
Welcome to Magnolia Bluff, Texas, a small town in the heart of the Texas Hill Country near Burnett Reservoir. A town where everyone's business is discussed at the local coffee shop. A town where neighbors look out for each other. A town not insulated from murder and mayhem. Which begs these questions. Who is responsible for breaking into quaint Victorian homes? And how are poodles, ghosts, drug cartels, and a Ponzi scheme connected with a serial killer? Caroline McCluskey, the town's librarian, catalogs books using the Dewey Decimal System. When a black and white poodle puppy arrives unannounced, she calls him Dewey. Now, Caroline must catalog events to identify a serial killer in her town. Pick up your copy of the Dewey Decimal Dilemma, now available on Amazon.
Many secrets are hidden within the darkness of the jungle. Behold, this one about a man, a woman, a black jaguar, and an ancient Maya legend. Two Faces of the Jaguar is a novel by George Dismukes that will take you deep into the jungle and capture your imagination until the last word. Two Faces of the Jaguar is book one of a trilogy. Two Faces of the Jaguar, where only the adventurous dare to read.
Two Faces of the Jaguar, The Lost City, and The Jaguar's Quest are available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites. Two Faces of the Jaguar, the book people are talking about. Get your copy today.
In a world where advancing technology is outpacing crime solving, the O'Rourke team continues their relentless pursuit of justice. Bioprints is the first book in the O'Rourke crime novel series where it's high-tech crime versus old-fashioned detective work. Visit carternovels.com or amazon.com and check out Bioprints today. And we're back.
We're back, and real quick before we talk about the book, I'm going to tell you how you can reach Bob. His email is media8@verizon.net, MEDIA, and then the number 8. On LinkedIn, you can find him as Bob-Emery, BOB-EMERY. On Twitter, you can find him as Bob Emery. On Instagram, you can find him as Robert Emery, author. And I think you can all spell all of those. Facebook, he's RJ Emery, and his website is robertjemeryauthor.com. So please look him up, check out all of these things. Let me remind you again, this is pre-recorded. Go ahead and try and get these books. You don't know
We're going to talk about the book in a minute,
Yeah.
but the first 3 people to email media8@verizon.net will win an ebook copy of America Standing Strong.
And I'm going to keep this ticker going so that you can read that.
Okay, so
And let's put back up the... There we go.
okay, you want to tell us a little bit about, first of all, the cover of the book for the people that are just listening.
Yeah, it was a very difficult book to design. I didn't know what to do with it. I came up with an idea, and then the book designer, she didn't think it was good. My publisher didn't think it was good. So much for my ideas. So we turned her loose, and she came back with this. My publisher liked it because they thought it was positive, that it sent a positive message. I wasn't all that crazy about it, but I went with it, and we've gotten compliments, so I guess it works.
It's a very attractive cover. Let me describe it. It's blue, like a blue sky, and it says America Standing Strong in that. And then there are birds flying up in a V formation.
Almost like a sunset?
Almost like a sunset or a sunrise over a lake, a river.
With mountains.
With mountains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I explain the book, the cover will make sense.
Okay.
Forgive me if I neglected to tell you that I did a Western. Willing and Scratch was the name of the Western. These are going back some years, so, people don't remember my films. But then I was hired to direct a full-fledged musical. And it was called Sign of Aquarius, and it was the producer had an idea to do a takeoff on Hair before they got theirs.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I spent a couple of months doing a musical, but I had a blast. I had a lot of fun. So I
love musicals.
Yeah.
I love musicals.
All original music. I mean, they really went out, and this thing was like #1 on the Variety's top selling list, the movie. And fortunately, little Bob Emery had a little piece of the action. So, but I'm sorry, I digress. But I did want to mention those 2 films because and the point being that I've done just about every genre in those 8 films that I did.
Yep. And now you've written books.
Certainly.
Well,
impressive.
in 2006, I said to my wife, because my spinal problem was getting worse and worse, and I couldn't put an 8-hour day in on a set anymore. And I said to my wife, I'm going to quit. I'm 65. I've done it. I've done everything I wanted to do, but one thing, and that's write books. Which
is what got you started in the beginning.
Yes.
Was your love of writing.
Yes. And I, for all those years, screenplays are not books. It's 1,000 miles in the other direction. So And the same thing when I do a script for television, it's not a book.
Yep.
So I sat down and I wrote a book called In the Realm of Eden. And it was about first contact, which has always fascinated me.
Yeah.
I believe that I am an alien. In any case, my wife believes that I'm an alien too. I want to believe. You remember the X-Files?
That's what that poster's from.
Okay, so that motivated me. Anyway, so I wrote this book, and publisher read it, and they said, we want to publish this book. So I said, okay, fine. And we did. And then I started writing, I forget what was next, but I had dedicated my life to, there's a couple of them, by the way, that never made it to print that I trashed. I was living the final end of my dream of everything that I wanted to do. Because again, you know, I got to tell you, I'm not starstruck, and I've met everybody. I've been to Barbra Streisand's house, you know.
Well, now you've met us.
And you want to know? Do you want to know who did rattle me? Robert Mitchum.
Yeah.
My God, I thought I am going to sit with Mitchum. I just thought I loved that man. And he sat around and he chatted with us and told stories about him and Howard Hughes. And it was just wonderful to meet all these people, because I have the greatest admiration for talent. You name them, and they were on the series, you know. And the directors, I was given the pleasure of documenting their lives, which I took very seriously. You said you saw an episode.
Yeah, I've seen more than one episode. I've seen quite a few of them. As soon as I saw that, I was like,
oh yeah,
I've watched those.
Yeah,
on Starz.
And so 2006, there I am, and I've got one show to go. I can't even remember which one I ended up with. And I announced to my wife and kids I was going to retire, and I was going to write books. My wife, by the way, who was married to me 80 years yesterday.
Oh, congratulations.
Did I say 80? 60. I'm sorry.
I was going to say.
Yeah, 60.
Okay,
60.
that's fine.
60. She said to me, what do you know about writing books? And I said, I know, I'm going to find out. So I wrote the first book I told you about, and she read it and said, great, screenplay, Bob. Reads like a screenplay.
Oh.
Oops.
Whoops.
You got a good story. It's interesting, but it sounds like a screenplay. You're not telling the people enough. And in a screenplay, you know, here's where we are. This is where you stop, talk here. So I went back to the drawing board, rewrote it, and the publisher published it. And I don't know where to go from there, because I've been on a roller coaster ever since. I don't write them quickly. Actually,
why don't you tell us about America Standing Strong? Because I know you wanted to particularly talk about that.
Yeah, before we run out of time.
We're rapidly running out of time. How long did that take you to write, and why did you write it?
14 months.
Okay.
It took me, first, why did I want to write it?
Yes.
Well, because we had just gone through this very difficult 4 years of political turmoil in the country. And there were books coming out that were all about the former president and his administration. And they were very wonderful investigative reports. And I read a couple of them. But I thought, okay, that's all well and good, but we cannot just keep talking about that. What's happened? What about what's going on with the citizens, the people? They went through that. Then there came COVID, and then they came racial uprising, and it didn't stop. And then there was the supply chain and prices and so forth. So I said, Sue, my wife, I have this idea. She said, why in the world? You're not a professor. I said, no, I want to hear the voices of other people. I want to hear all the sages of our time and current people. So I sat down and I wrote all the chapters that I think I wanted to write about, going back to dictators and how they mess up the world, and changing demographics and what it means to America and so forth and so on. And then I did 2 months of research trying to find voices and quotes that would support the chapter, whatever the chapter was. Lies and misinformation and conspiracy theories, whatever. And once I had all that together, the file was 174 pages in my computer. And
Wow.
as I got them, I broke them down into chapters. And then I started writing and then injected myself. But I wasn't the primary motivator behind it. I was the one that had an opinion, and hopefully it was non-political. I tried to walk that middle line, and I had all these people come in, and I got permission from everybody to reprint once they found out what I was doing. So, and my publisher said, "Gee, I think you got something." Well, here's the problem. I think we've done well with the book. It only came out in June 22nd. It was that way. The publisher wanted it to come out before the 4th of July, just before the 4th of July. And then I had just recently had an audio book made of it too. And the publisher said, "I think we're on to something." But I feel that it does get lumped in with all these other political books that are only about one man, one time. And, that's all well and good if that's what you want to do. But I'm just a guy, and there's a lot of other just guys in this country, right? We're not all wealthy, rich, and brainiacs. And I wanted to speak to them, and I wanted to say to them, it doesn't have to be this way. That what if we did it this way? What if we took a little more responsibility? Read the Constitution. It says we're in charge. Those people work for us. And we've abdicated that. We've given them the power and took it away from ourselves. And so if we have political problems, look in the mirror. And that was a big theme in the book. Pay attention to issues. Understand the issues. Forget if you're a Republican, an independent, or a Democrat. Try to see the issues. Myself, I've been a registered independent from the day I turned 18 and was in the Air Force and registered. And I tried my hardest to not, because I'm no different from anybody else. I have opinions. I have my own thoughts, but I had to be very, very careful if I was going to make an impact. And so one of the things I never did was to use the former president's name. I always refer to him as the former president with respect. I don't care if he still was in the Oval Office. What happens, what happens. Who cares? It's not my business. It's not for me to say. My hope was that I would get people thinking. The reviews have been wonderful. You're familiar with Kirkus reviews.
Yes.
Okay, so I said, I'm going to gamble. They're probably going to take me to the woods. One of the best reviews I got was from Kirkus.
Wow, that's good. They don't hand them out free.
No, they don't. They don't hand them out free for sure.
They don't,
and also, they really
they don't hand out good ones.
Good ones
very often.
Very
when
often.
it came in, the day it came in, I got the email and said, "Go to this book." And I said to my wife, "Get me a razor blade. I may have to cut my wrists." There's the Kirkus view, and they were just very kind, very, very nice about the book. They never tell you who reviews it, so you don't know.
Right.
Nope, you don't know.
And then all of the other reviews, both from the public and from professional reviews. Words elude me.
That's okay.
They were all good. They were all good. And so it was, and I never wrote it for money. And believe me, I spent more money getting it out there and promoting it than I'll ever see back.
So you kind of hit on it a little bit. What the the subjects that you cover are what?
To make
Basically,
Um,
that comprise the book.
I wish I had one in my hand. I would read it to
Oh,
you.
okay.
Oh, that's
Sorry,
all
didn't
right.
mean to put you on the spot.
No,
Yeah.
that's okay. It's just my memory. But I started off with a whole thing about who are we? Who are we?
Okay.
As a people.
As a people, as a country,
people,
who are
who
we?
are we? Had nothing to do with the book. It's just who are we? Let's take a step back, look in the mirror, and see who we are.
Yeah.
And I wrote about that. In the beginning, I quoted author and screenwriter William Goldman, one of the greatest 3 words ever. And he was talking about Hollywood at the time, but it applies. And he said, nobody knows anything. And I said, that's my premise, that we all think we know. But unless we listen to each other and we kind of keep an open mind, we'll never know. We'll only know what we think we know, which we don't know. And then I went on to a responsibility as parents. And then I got into dictators and how they've affected the world. And then I went into terrorism, both domestic and international. I talked about changing demographics in America, that they've changed. Get over it. Well, I mean it seriously. You just can't. You can't. You know the old saying. You can't beat you can't beat a dead horse to death. The horse is dead. Be realistic.
Right.
And anyway, and then I went into, I don't know, we covered the 2016 to 2020, just enough to establish how we became so polarized. And then we talked about the election, and then COVID. And I went through all of that stuff. We did a section on Black Lives Matter. Lies, conspiracies, misinformation. Now, at the end of each chapter, it basically says, why did we do all this? Well, in big letters, it says a call to action. Here's what you can do.
Good.
Good.
And then it says, here's what happens. Here are the consequences if we don't. It's like, I'll give you a good example. How many people know that in 1988, a scientist, a NASA scientist, sat in front of Congress and laid out climate change, and it was buried? 1988. I've documented it. It's all there. So why? We're paying for it big time. I just went through a hurricane here. Right?
As did you.
Yeah, well, fortunately,
our son lost his house. Actually, they're living with us right now.
Well, if you follow, that as well as I, that thing was headed for Tampa. Then she did a turn, and look what happened to those poor people down there. So anyway, but there is an example, and I said, why do we always wait until the horse is out of the barn before we close the door? This didn't have to happen if everybody listened to Robert Hansen, and I forget the other scientist's name, sitting in front of a congressional committee, telling them, ladies and gentlemen, we have a problem. And here's the stats.
I think one of the most important things that you said was that we all need to listen to each other, and we need to do our own research.
Right.
Yeah. Read what scientists are saying and make sure they're peer reviewed. This is what we do. And then you can form your own opinion, right?
Yeah.
The
scariest words and the scariest words in the English language is, I read that on the internet.
You need to read the research. You need to go to the source. You need to read it. You need to see if it's been peer reviewed. If it's been peer reviewed, who has it been peer reviewed by? That's what you need to do. And then you can make your own educated opinion. You don't have to have someone else telling you how to think. or
That's
what's
true.
true or what's a lie, you know?
I gave the manuscript to 5 people and before it published, and said, if you come back and you tell me this is garbage, it's never going to see the light of day. How can it? Every one of them came back and said, and these were educated people, my God, I read things I didn't know and I'm angry.
Oh,
In different words, but they all basically came back with the same reaction. And again, like I say, these are smart people, and that's why I gave them the book. I gave it to my editor before we ever touched that end of it. And she came back and said, people have got to read this. So it's been going relatively well. I'm just worried that we're lumped in with some of those narrow political books, and I'm not criticizing them because the 3 of them that I wrote were extremely well written. Bob Woodward and Carol Lanning and I forget the other fellow's name. So it's not a criticism. It's just that I thought that was kind of a narrow window, that was more going on. I don't want to know what's going on in Washington. It's a mess. I want to know what's going on with people. What are they doing? How are they suffering? And
you don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear it filtered through the news media, because that's all
skewed one way or the other.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't mind being on Today. You know.
Well, then you'd be giving your opinion, and that would be good. Yeah.
So, well,
so anyway, I mean that's how that book came about, and I don't know why I wrote it. But I don't regret it.
All right. Well, we want to encourage everybody. This is a pre-recorded show, so if you haven't entered the book giveaway for America Standing Strong, go ahead, type in the email address and send a note to Bob and say, I want that book, and see what happens. Okay. Even if it's a week or 2 from now, you know.
And I also want to remind you that his email is media8@verizon.net.
Right.
And that's MEDIA and the number 8, not the word 8, the number 8.
We could have it flash.
Yeah.
That.
The people listening,
they won't hear it flashing. That's for sure. Okay.
That won't help them.
That's true. That's very true. Okay. So go ahead and enter and see what other books he's got on his website too. He's written some other really good books, it looks like.
But he really wants you to know about this book.
Reality. Yeah, he wants to get a read.
I don't control the distribution, but there were 4. I was asked by a New York publisher. Actually, it was Lauren Michaels, producer of Saturday Night Live, had a publishing company, and they contacted me and said, would you write a book on the background of the directors? Tell us what you went through. Tell us how you interacted with the talent and so forth. So I wrote, and they wanted we agreed, I think, on 10 to 12. And then they came back and said, that was good, let's do another one. And then they came back and said, that was good, let's do another. So there's 4 books.
There's 5 of those, right?
4 of them.
4 of them. I knew there were 4 or 5. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was fun. I transcribed all of the interviews, so that because the interviews that we would do an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe longer. Well, in the show, by the time you run clips and guests, the director got 25 minutes to chat, right?
Yeah.
So I recreated in the books and then gave all my little interactions, and it was fun. It was fun.
So pick those up too.
Okay. Well, I think we're kind of running down toward the end of the show. What kind of advice would you give, Bob, to anybody that's, young, old, haven't been able to put the pencil to the paper out of fear or whatever? Do you have any advice for them?
Yes.
They want to write.
They want to write.
Well, I think that everybody has a book in them. Everybody has a story, and some want to write it, and some think, oh, I can never do that. But just sit down and do it. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be bad. Somebody will help you clean it up if it's any good at all. But don't hold it inside. Writing is fun. When I sit down to write a book, this is important. I don't write it for anybody but me. I write it because that's the story that I wanted to tell. And then when I'm finished, I'm hoping that others will like it, you know.
We'll enjoy it. Yeah.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
That's the way to go.
Yeah. That's it.
That's my advice. And get a good spelling punctuation program.
There you go. Yeah. There's a lot of good ones on the internet.
On the internet. You can get by software.
There you go. Well, I want to thank you for joining us. You've had a fascinating career, and you've met a lot of fascinating people, and you are one of those fascinating people. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure everyone enjoyed this show.
This is a book that I feel like Bob feels like he had to write.
Yeah.
And that he wants people to read.
That's right.
So that we'll get up off our duff and quit complaining and do something.
Right. That's true.
It's the future of our kids and grandkids.
There you go.
And it's important.
That is important. So, okay. Well, once again, thanks a lot for joining us. We're going to move you over to the side here. Very carefully. Hold on to your headphones. Okay. There you go. And, well, that was really interesting, right?
Amazing.
Want to remind everybody to tune into the Voice of Indie podcast on blogtalkradio.com with Beam Weeks and Stephen G's. Right after this show, go ahead and flop over there and
actually you're late already.
You're late already, so hurry up. Next Saturday on Episode Rewind is episode 56, 5:30 p.m. right here where you're watching, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Dr. Michelle Finneran's episode. And next Wednesday, it's going to be we don't know who's going to be on, but I'm sure it'll be a good show. And you can join us because we'll be here live. So also, catch up if you haven't already, the Magnolia Bluff Crime Chronicles. So far, we've got October, November, the December one. I think by the time this airs, will be coming out about now.
Yes.
I don't even have the working title of that
yet.
It's Jinx by Jinx Schwartz. But
I think it's going to be Justice.
No, Justice is November.
Oh, Justice
is Kelly Marshall.
Yeah. That's right.
October's Dewey Decimal Dilemma. That's already been out with Linda Pirtle. November, Justice with Kelly Marshall, and December is question mark at this point with Jinx Schwartz. But
she'll be tying up the 9-book series.
You'll see it on the Indie Book Source Facebook page and everywhere else by now.
Yep. It'll have been out for a while.
Yeah. So, I guess. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No.
No, you don't. Okay, so let's. Until next time, then.
That's all, folks.
Live every Wednesday, your Voice of Indie hosts Beam Weeks and Stephen G's welcome authors, musicians, publishing industry pros, artists, and assorted creative guests for an exciting interactive hour. Call in during the show or post questions and comments on Twitter for responses in real time. Meet your favorite indie creators. Learn inside tips, network, and promote your work. The link for each week's show is pinned on Twitter atop @VoiceOfIndie, and you can receive the link every Wednesday morning in your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter at freshinkgroup.com. Check out Voice of Indie every Wednesday on Blog Talk Radio and catch hundreds of episodes archived everywhere from our websites to our YouTube channel and Spotify.
Thank you for joining us here on Meet the Author. Make sure you stay up to date with our show by clicking like, follow, and share. And you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and more. See you next time on WLFE-DB.com.
You've been listening to WLFE-DB.com, where our shows are your shows.